There was a time when your phone never stopped ringing, when your weekends were spoken for months in advance, when your kitchen table was surrounded by voices, some welcome, some not, but always present. And now, perhaps, things have grown quieter. The calls come less often. The invitations have thinned. The calendar that once overflowed now holds open squares of white space that stretch across entire weeks. And somewhere in that silence, a thought creeps in. Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe I have been forgotten. Maybe I am disappearing. But what if you have not been forgotten at all? What if something far more intelligent is happening? What if that quiet phone, that open calendar, that seemingly empty stretch of afternoon, is not evidence of loss, but evidence of clarity? Because here is what almost no one tells you about growing older. The shrinking of your world is not a closing, it is a distillation. And what remains, after everything unnecessary has fallen away, is not emptiness, it is peace. A peace most people spend their entire lives chasing and never once find, because they are too busy answering phones that should have gone to voicemail decades ago. Once you let go of the need to be endlessly productive, you will likely notice something else slipping away: your tolerance for exhausting people. These two things are deeply connected. For most of your life, you measured your value by how much you could give, how much you could do, how available you could be to everyone who asked. And that generosity, while noble on the surface, came with an invisible cost. It trained you to accept any relationship, any dynamic, any conversation, regardless of whether it actually nourished you. You said yes to lunches that left you drained. You returned calls from people who only ever talked about themselves. You attended gatherings out of guilt, not joy. And you called all of it friendship. But it was not friendship. It was obligation, wearing a pleasant mask. And now, in your 70s or beyond, something inside you has shifted. Not dramatically, not with anger or resentment, but quietly, gently, like a tide pulling back to reveal what was always underneath. You have begun to notice the difference between people who fill your cup and people who drink from it without ever asking if you are thirsty. This is the essence of what the ancient Stoics called the dichotomy of control. Learning to distinguish between what serves your peace and what merely drains your energy. And once you see that difference, you cannot unsee it. In his essay on the shortness of life, the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. He was talking about time, but he could just as easily have been talking about relationships. Because the truth is, many of us have spent decades investing our finite emotional energy into connections that gave us nothing in return, except the comfortable illusion of being needed. And there is a profound difference between being needed and being valued. Being needed means someone requires your labor, your attention, your emotional resources. Being valued means someone treasures your presence, simply because you exist. After 70, you start to know the difference in your bones. You feel it in the first 30 seconds of a phone call. You feel it in the absence of pretending to be entertained by someone who has never once asked you a meaningful question in 40 years of so-called friendship. And so the circle shrinks, not because you have become cold, not because you are bitter, but because you have finally become honest. And honesty, real honesty, is the most quietly revolutionary act a human being can perform. As the former slave turned philosopher Epictetus taught, we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. And this includes our judgments about who deserves our precious time. There is something most never anticipate about this process, and it changes everything. You expect to feel selfish for stepping back from a sibling who only calls when they need money. You expect to feel cruel for declining an invitation from someone who spends every dinner complaining. But the guilt, that old familiar companion, begins to dissolve. And in its place, something extraordinary grows. Space. Not empty space. Not lonely space. Sacred space. The kind of space where you can hear your own thoughts for what might be the first time in decades. The kind of space where, sitting in your chair with a cup of tea and the sound of birds outside, becomes richer and more satisfying than any crowded room you have ever entered. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, Meditations, that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Notice he did not say the quantity of your friendships. He did not say the fullness of your schedule. He said the quality of your thoughts. This pursuit of what the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, true human flourishing, cannot reach its highest expression when constantly interrupted by people who bring noise instead of meaning. Solitude, real solitude, is not loneliness. Loneliness is the ache of wanting connection and not finding it. Solitude is the peace of having curated your world so carefully that even your own company feels like enough. And this is not something to be pitied. This is something to be admired. Because most people will spend their entire lives surrounded by others and still feel profoundly alone. Because they never learned the difference between being in a room full of people and being truly known by even one. You have learned that difference. It cost you the illusion of popularity. It cost you the comfort of a full address book. But what it gave you in return is immeasurable. It gave you the freedom to love the people who remain, with a depth and sincerity that was never possible when your attention was scattered across dozens of superficial bonds. Think of it this way. A garden with 30 different flowers, none of them properly tended, is not a garden. It is a mess. But a garden with 3 flowers, each one carefully watered, each one given sunlight and attention, each one blooming fully, that is a masterpiece. Your life after 70 is not a diminished garden. It is a curated one. And the people still in it, the ones who stayed not out of obligation but out of genuine love, they are receiving the best version of you that has ever existed. Because you are no longer spread thin. You are finally, fully present. So the next time that silence settles over your home, and the old voice whispers that something is missing, let a newer, wiser voice answer back. Nothing is missing. Everything unnecessary has simply been returned. What remains is what matters. What remains is what is real. Your circle did not shrink because you failed. It shrank because you grew. And growth, at any age, is never something to mourn. It is something to honor. If these words found you at the right moment, you are welcome here anytime. Golden Years is a quiet place for those walking the Stoic path, those who have earned the right to stop pretending. Subscribe, and we will be here whenever you need us.